Hello and welcome to the black charcoal demonstration video of shading in the eyebrow, the side of the face, and the hair. So we are going to be working with our black charcoal pencil, our white charcoal pencil, our blending stump, our Q-tip, and our value finder. So make sure you've got everything that you need before we begin. We are also going to be referring to the page in our lesson guide where you can see that it is outlined to show specific areas and what we used to fill in that space. For example, on the side of the chin here, you can see that we fill this amount in with black, and then we come in with our blending stump and fade it all the way out until we reach the gray paper. So we've got paper that's just the gray tone of the paper showing through before we get to the white. So typically between all of these sections, because here is where we've got our black pencil and here is where we've got our white pencil, we have our blending stump layer to fade out, gray tone from our paper left behind before we have the white kind of fading out here. So we want to have that full transition of the black charcoal pencil fading to the blending stump, fading to the paper tone so that you've got that space in between, and then to the white charcoal pencil. So let's have this out next to us as we are working. I'm going to scooch this over so that you can see as we go through. Now we are going to begin with our eyebrow, and let's just go ahead and take our blending stump. We're going to do this all together. This is a follow along video. So you're going to take your blending stump, and I am just snagging some black from the neck section where I had that already filled in quite dark. And I am going to look at my reference photo. Let's put this eyebrow as close to it as we can. Now we're working on making that like darker medium tone in the background. So I'm coming through and just kind of darkening the shape, and I'm gonna steal some more black so that I can really get that shape to start to show up. And I'm just kind of going through perfecting the shape of the eyebrow. And we've got kind of a turn at the end of the eyebrow here, so I'm kind of bringing some of that darker value down to meet the eye. Now take a look up at the board. We are wrapping around this highlight in the brow bone. And this is quite often something that people who work a lot with makeup will know, that we want to accentuate that brow bone by adding a lighter color of eyeshadow there to really emphasize that highlight. Now we're going to do that with charcoal by coming around on the side of the eyebrow with just our blending stumps here to dust up into that space to really make it have a nice soft transition out to that highlight. So we're just perfecting this space and filling in the background of our eyebrow. Be careful not to go too dark. Now it should look something like this. And then we're going to come in, and we want to be working with a very sharp pencil. And something that I find to be particularly helpful is I'll lay this picture back down, and I'm going to just take a regular drawing pencil, and I'm going to come in and trace the direction of the angle of the hair. So it's going just kind of at a backwards tilt until we get to this corner and the angle of the hairs turns to sideways. So we want to show ourselves the angles of the hair here. Now let's lift up. And we've got just those little key guidelines for ourselves. And I am going to zoom in here so you can really follow along with this step. All right, now we have our eyebrow folded and as close to the image as possible. I'm going to use very skinny, light lines, and I want to kind of leave that texture kind of hairy. We want to have those lines still showing. So I am not going to come back through with my blending stump here because I want to leave some of that texture. I'm looking for some of these like little stragglers. We want to match that shape the best that we can. I'm kind of leaving it kind of fuzzy, or like I'm not blending those lines on top of this edge, just letting them stay. Now we've got just kind of a shift in our direction coming up here, and I'm twisting my pencil as I go to help myself find better crisp, sharp points on the pencil to make my lines as thin as I can get them. Now right here at this turn, it's pretty filled in. So we're gonna come through here, and we've got right in this space, pretty much all of it is like, we don't see much of the skin tone showing through. So I'm gonna make that pretty filled in, but not blending it all the way. We're just adding our lines. And right after that kind of darker shift is when our lines switch direction. So now they're going at a downward slant towards the ear. Now we want to fill in the end of the eyebrow to be almost black. We've got a pretty dark edge here. And that's just gonna kind of fade out into that transition that we created. Now what I'm gonna do next, I'm going to take my eyelashes and I'm gonna put them in front of my eyes a little bit. I'm just kind of squinting and looking at this piece to see where I can come in and make it match my picture more, because we're not just going by like what we think an eyebrow looks like. We're not just continuing doing what we like know in our minds. We are trying to copy this eyebrow exactly. So I'm like looking for specific little parts that I can come through and add to make this look even more like the reference photo. Now I am just like looking back and forth. I've kind of filled in a little bit more on this darker curve. I've got a little bit of the space showing through for my skin on the corner itself. And then maybe I could go a touch darker, like right through here, just to get this to match the best that we can. Blow away your dust. Now, if you have some very grainy spots, you're welcome to just like touch with your blending stump, but I say that so hesitantly because I really want to see those lines. We're just trying to try to hide the graininess of it, but still to show the value. So I'm gonna come in now and use my blending stump to bring that eyebrow shadow down and to kind of blend out on the side of the face here for that shadow along the hairline. So we're just kind of letting that eyebrow fade out and down. All right, now we're just gonna double check, make sure we are matching. Just darkening up a little bit in this eye space underneath. Now that I've got the hairs in, I feel like it should be a bit darker. We're just kind of perfecting here. We want to get this as close as we can to the picture, so really be looking back and forth. We're not just drawing a face, we're drawing this specific face, and if you're not looking at it, it won't look like the picture. So we are just filling that in. Now from here, we are going to continue on the face itself. So shading in the cheek and like the side of the face, like all of the other shadows that we have not added yet. So let's go ahead and consider that we want to always work from the left to the right if you're right-handed, opposite if you're left-handed, but we are going to work on the left so that we get these details done, and then we move over so that we don't finish something on this side and then have to hop back and smudge it after we've done it. Now let's start on our chin, and we are just starting with our blending stumps, and I'm going to steal some value from the neck space underneath, and I'm just bringing this in, and it should be like a subtle difference between the neck to the chin value here. So just fairly dark to make that actually blend in. Now I'm going to come in on this side with my blending stump, and I'm just kind of outlining that gray on the chin here. So I'm just kind of like going around and outlining, and I want to leave this little patch on the chin to be the gray tone of the paper. So I'm not bringing my black all the way up to where the white is. I want to have that transition before I get there. Now we are going to continue working our way up on the side of the face, and I like to use my blending stump first to kind of go through and make soft transitions, and then I'll add in the black. So right now, I want you to take a look up at the board, and we are working on, oh man, I hope that you could see the chin section. Now, we are working on filling in this mouth end, like the little dimple at the end. We've got a little bit of a shadow, so I'm bringing my blending stump out with that little bit of a shadow here, and I'm trying to make a circle or a small ring around this subtle highlight that's at the the right side of the lip here. So I'm just kind of bringing this charcoal around that highlight to have just a nice transition out. Now I'm going to use my blending stump, and I'm just like filling all the way up to that little highlight. Now let's come out around this little indent here. So this highlight stretches out into the jawline a little bit, and I'm just kind of going along the edges I gave myself when I was filling in the borders for where all of my highlights transition. So I'm just kind of like going right up against that white and just kind of leaving some space to blend together. All right, now I am gonna come in with my black charcoal pencil. You guys will do this with me. So we are just coming up with our charcoal pencil along the side here, and I'm not pressing with a value 10, I'm just like adding a decent amount, and I'm gonna add just like a little sliver, kind of like connecting that little jut out, like the corner of her jaw. And let's switch to our blending stump. So take a look and make sure you've got this amount of black. And now we're just gonna go over the edge that's on the side, the closest to the cheek. And I'm gonna bring this over here, my picture, so that I can really look, and I'm gonna line up the bottom so that I can see, okay, like this is where I'm at right here. So I need to come in with some more gray tones to help match that. And I'm gonna steal from this black and kind of bring it up, and I'm just stretching that out to those values we just created. So I'm just blending directly on top of the black charcoal right now. I'm gonna bring it out all the way down to the chin. All right, so now we've kind of blended that in, and we're coming out and surrounding this cheekbone right here. And we wanna come through and soften this space so that we have a nice transition out to that white. So I'm making this a little softer with my blending stump. And if you've got too much charcoal on your blending stump, you should clean it off to help yourself. We're just kind of working our way up, and then I want to wrap around this little highlight, the end of the triangle of white near the eye. So I'm just bringing in a little bit more dark and just letting that kind of wrap around the cheekbone up here. Nice and curved. All right, now at this point, I've stolen a lot of my charcoal, so I'm gonna come in and add just one last little pass of black, just not quite as thick. I'm just bringing that in to show myself the edge here. Just a little more. And I'm just blending it all the way in. Now, this is a moment for us to really pay attention to our diagram on the side here. So see how we've got this is stretching all the way up and kind of filling in that corner. So we want to make sure that we've got enough of that darkness. So let's take a look at our other side of the face here. And we are going to fill in just a little bit more, I'd say, in this area. We're going to go through and just add a little bit, kind of trailing through that space. A little bit more. And let's just check and make sure that we've got as much of that dark value as we should. So I'm just looking back and forth between these spaces, and we want that highlight to be nice and subtle. Now I am gonna go through and just blend out that value, and that is looking a bit better. Now what I can do to check to see if I am on the right track, first I can check by folding my paper, and I'm gonna place this just directly on top, and now I can see, uh-oh, I'm not quite dark enough in this area. So I'm gonna come in while this is folded, and I am blending my values out to match this value and to kind of follow along those lines. So now I can unfold that and see, did that impact the inside? Okay, yes, probably a little. So I'm gonna come in and just kind of soften that up. Now I think after that, I probably need to darken up that bottom corner a little bit because I stole from that space. All right, now we are just continuing fading that out, and we'll just continue double checking by folding or by taking our value finder, and I can say, all right, I'm trying to match this space. It looks like it's about a 7. See how that circle disappears? So I'm gonna take that and check, and I think I'm like right about there. See how that circle disappears as well? So I am pretty darn close, but this step does take a little bit of back and forth because it's not as simple to see if it matches as quickly as the other features because there's different parts to this that are more subtle, I would say. So we are just going through and perfecting. Now, you may need more time for that, and that's okay. You can always do more of the perfecting layer as we reach this last step. But we are going to come through and add the hair now. So you can change the pages on your lesson guide so that you can see what we are working on next. Hair is something that does not follow the same rules as the rest of the areas we've completed. We are going to start with black instead of starting with our white. We're going to use our blending stump, and then the last step is coming in with our highlights and texture with our white charcoal pencil. So you are going to continue by first making sure you've got all of the hair sections that you need. So you can come through and retrace. We want to see the direction change. So I kind of showed myself like where the direction changes are. And also I've outlined the highlights, and I'm going through and grabbing a couple of these little wispies just to add in after we've gone through. All right, now I have gone through and we've got our little wispies. I've got like the curl, and now I'm going to take my reference photo and I'm going to place the hair section as close as I can get it to the hair strand that I'm working on. All right, now we are going to come in with our our black charcoal pencil first. And I like to line this up with the bottom edge of my picture and my paper so that I can make sure I'm doing this like at the right height. But I can see that from the edge of the forehead here, I've got like a pretty solid black little section. I'm gonna come in and just like add the black really solidly on the areas where I see it's coming in very solidly. So see on this first little curl here, I would like for you guys to maybe pick up on this one with me. So right here on this curl, it's the one right above the earring. So here's that little earring right there. Now I'm gonna come in and I'm going to border on the back and the side here so that we can have the highlight come in this space. So again, let's start on this little curl together. We're gonna add this real dark, almost black little section that's coming out and fading at the bend, and then it's darker again, leaving space for that highlight. Now we have our start, and it comes out and it's much darker. We hit that curve, we leave the highlight right in the middle, and then come in with our dark behind it. Same down here, that highlight, and catching our highlight here, and just adding in those last few little parts of the curls. All right, now when you see a curl, I would like to just talk with you really quickly about that. When you see a curl, like if you've got like a curl like this on a little piece of hair, and we've got like the kind of, it's going through and kind of like shifting, right? So it's usually a change in thickness, but it's also going to show you where the highlights belong, because when you see hair, if it's going back in space, like where it's bending, that's where it's darkest, and where the biggest part of the curve is where the light will catch, because this is where the highlight is from the light. So we've got the dark, and then where it comes out in that curve is where the light will catch it because it's sticking out the farthest. So we have dark in the back sides, and then where the curve comes out is typically where the highlight will be. And that's the same for like if you've got like the top of someone's head and this is like their hair, right? So if this is their hair, typically it's dark along like the hairline. You'll probably have like a seam that has like the skin kind of showing, and then you can come in, and where it bends on the head is typically where you'll see that highlight coming in. So I would then like have some hair kind of curving around, and then it'll get darker again. So it's very similar for most types of hair. Wherever it bends or has a curve, that is where the highlight catches. So let's continue on in our blending stump step, and we'll place our picture again just lined up with our image and right next to our paper here. Now I'm going to go through just on the curls for now, because that's, I think, really informative about learning how to draw hair. And we are just going to like soften up the grain, and we don't want to fill in too much, so you can always be just cleaning your blending stump off. I'm going to clean mine a lot through this process. So I just filled in the black and left that highlight nice and smooth. Now I'm going to clean off my blending stump again. I'm going to fill that highlight with just a nice medium and then blend out the black. So we're just going through, and for each of these highlights, I'm going to go in and blend it to be nice and light and then blend the black around it. So as you're going, make sure you clean for those highlights, or else it's probably going to fill in to be all the same tone. Like, we want to have some differences here. So I'm just going through and I'm looking at my reference photo to make sure I am copying what I see. Now at this point, let's go ahead and add in the black for the hair above. We are going to add this solid patch. Go ahead and do this with me. And this is like a big curl right here. So we're gonna add the dark on either side of it. We're also gonna add this little arch just directly right underneath the curl. That's where it begins. And we've got this curl just kind of like wrapping. We've got this line kind of coming through it, and then this is where the next highlight starts, is right here. And we've got this little curl right through here, and I'm just going to fill this space in right up against the face to be black, and we are going to do that all the way up to the earring. And that's like the bottom of the ear, so we'll just kind of pause there. So we are gonna go through, and let's see, on the side we've got just a little bit more of the hair showing, and we want to bring that all the way up to the top of our paper. So I'm just gonna come in with a light little layer of charcoal, and I'm gonna leave some space for this highlight, this main highlight here. Now let's clean off our blending stumps, and I'm gonna fill that highlight first so that I don't go too dark, and I'm cleaning my blending stump. Gonna fill that highlight and this highlight, maybe this one back here as well. And now I'm gonna go through and darken everything. All that black, I'm gonna just blend it to be nice and soft. So let's do this together. So we're looking at our image and we're making sure that we have caught all of these values. And I see that as I add my black, this does not look dark enough now. So I think this means I'm gonna clean my blending stump off, and I'm gonna come through now and just like blend along that line to give it more of like a transition out, and to also help it to get subtly darker. So I'm just kind of blending along the edge of the face here, just kind of taking that down into the cheekbone section. All right. Now, we are going to hop back into the hair. Let's blend out all of our black, make sure that we don't have any grainy sections, because we want our hair to be nice and like glassy smooth. I'm gonna blend in just the side of the forehead, just a little bit over here. And I'll clean off my blending stump again in case it's too dark. So let's just go along the side here. We wanna leave that highlight by the edge of the eye, or the eyebrow. Nice little corner of highlight there. Now let's come through, and we are just going to make sure all of the hair is ready. So we're smoothing it out so that we don't have any grainy spots. Okay, blow away your dust. And for this next step, we're gonna come in and we're gonna use our white charcoal pencil to add some specific hairs. So let's come up to the top, and I want you to put your finger on your reference photo. So have this section right here with your finger on it. We're gonna add this one little white line. See this little guy? We've got 1, 2, and then it kind of switches angles, kind of comes out, and then we've got some just coming straight down right above. Okay, now we're gonna hop in to this space, and I'm just gonna like add a couple of these individual lines, and I'm using like a skinny part of my charcoal pencil to make sure that it's nice and thin. We don't want these lines to be very thick. Now, follow where I'm at right now. I want you to put your finger right at this little curve. So this is the line that's kind of going back, and this is the curve underneath it, and it starts with just a little bit of an arch, and then it kind of wraps its way down. And we are just bringing that down, and now we're gonna hop into our little curve here. So we've got this little highlight kind of coming down through this space. So let's take our lines, and we're gonna make them nice and short, all at that kind of same diagonal angle, and we just put them next to each other with a little bit of the black showing through still. I'm gonna add just a couple random little lines from this section where you can see some hairs showing. Now I'm gonna do a couple white lines in this next curl. And I am gonna take my blending stump and fill in this earring really fast, just with some medium tone. And then I'm gonna come in and add this white highlight, that white circle, and a little smidge of a line like underneath. All right, now we've got a couple little highlights to add in the bottom section here. So I'm just adding these little highlights and following along with my finger as I go. And here's our last section before they like split. I'm gonna add just a couple little lines through here. All right, so this is where we're at. And I am gonna just take a moment to see how much charcoal I've got on my blending stump. And I'm gonna now use my blending stump to trace out some of these stragglers and also to add in like some of the texture and to like kind of disappear or like lessen the highlight in some areas of the white that might be too bright. So I'm just dusting over the top with my blending stump to just kind of go through. And now I'm gonna take it and I'm drawing over the top of my outlines of some of these little scragglers, and we want them to be specific lines, not just like random little things. So you really do need to like actually make sure you've transferred that the straggly little hairs here so that you have those to draw from. Because remember, we are going for a copy, not similar. Now let's go ahead and we're just like adding some very light, like I'm not pressing very hard, and I'm just trying to like find the skinniest little part that I can, and I'm just like adding in a few little random hairs. And if you start to run out, steal some black charcoal from another area so that you still have enough to work with. So I'm gonna come in and just add a few more through here, just very lightly. And now I can take a look, and this next step is the perfecting step and also our last step. So we are going to just take a look, and I want you to put your eyelashes in front of your eye, and we are going to clean off our blending stumps a bit, and now we're just going through and perfecting. So I'm like looking back and forth and saying, okay, where is it lighter and where is it darker in this image so that I can start to match them even more. I noticed the side of my eye was a little bit light, and you can kind of follow along with me for this perfecting step. And so I'm coming through and just kind of covering up a little bit of the highlight on the side of her eye here and blending that out so it's kind of like a U shape, so that I'm coming through on some of that white. Now I'm also going to bring out this gray just a smidge more into the cheek section. I think that could use a little bit of work. And I'm just kind of bringing it up and around the nose. Let's make sure that we have a nice soft edge on the shadow under the nose. So I'm just like going through and doing a little bit of work to make this match the best that I can. So I see it's a touch darker, oh geez, on the top lip. Maybe not that quite, not that dark. I'll go back through and fix. So I am gonna go through and add some black as I need it. So I just kind of took away the shadow from underneath the nose. So I just added another line back in so that I can use my blending stump to just come in and soften that and make that a little bit more accurate. I can go through and look at the lips to make sure that those values are matching. I could probably go a little darker as it like reaches towards the chin here. So I'm just gonna start filling that in just a smidge more. And notice that we want to have kind of like a line on the edge of the jaw here that's showing the change in angle. I think I also maybe made my highlights a touch too light around the mouth, so I'm just kind of going around and softening those so they're not quite so bright, not so vibrant. Now we are just going through and finding these areas where we need to continue adding and adjusting to make this as perfect as possible. Now, this step may take longer for everyone. This part is very individually based, so you do not need to continue following along if you are still working on making those adjustments. Now, this was our last practice before we move into our final draft. So make sure that you feel comfortable, continue working if you still feel like you need some practice, but great job following along. I know that drawing a face can be quite intimidating for most people, and you just did this so well and followed along with these steps, and I'm sure this is probably one of the better faces that you've ever drawn. And so I just want to say congratulations and good work, and keep it up, because this is the way you get better, is by practicing and continuing to learn. So good job. Thanks for watching.